You're now listening to the Gratitude Podcast, episode 106. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe.
Revel in the moment, celebrate your wins, and enjoy what you have. Because no matter where you're at right now in your current position, somebody has less than you. And they've done all kinds of studies, scientific studies that show some of the happiest people on the planet have the least amount of things. And I truly believe in that because I can talk from the opposite aspect of that. The more things you have doesn't make you more happy. And I'm not one to say money is bad or anything like that. I don't agree with that. But what happens, the more we have, the less we appreciate it. The further away we get from being content and grateful for what we have in our current situations. And the more we focus, so the opposite of that, the more we focus on being thankful and grateful for the things we do have, no matter how small or how minimal that might be, the happier we're going to be. And in the end, really, that's all that matters. If you can learn, and it's a practice exercise, I can tell you it does not come naturally, but if you can learn to just constantly be thankful for what you have, you're going to be so much happier and probably more successful as well in the long run.
Welcome to the Gratitude Podcast on www.georgeandbenta.com, where you'll hear a new story each week that will inspire more gratitude in your own life. Our mission is to inspire 100,000 people to discover how to feel gratitude and live a happy life through the amazing life stories of our successful guests and their actionable tips. And now, the host of our podcast, George and Benta.
Hi, Gratitude Seeker. Welcome to a new episode of the Gratitude Podcast. Today with me, I have Mark Waid. He's actually Dr. Mark Waid from Hustle and Scale. He is helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses, but he is also the co-founder of the American Posture Institute. And what's interesting about Mark is the fact that he has built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses from the ground up, but he has also lost millions as well. And I think he has a really interesting life experience from which we can all learn a lot. And I'm really curious about the role that gratitude played in his successes, but also how he dealt with the losses. Mark, welcome to the Gratitude Podcast. Let us know a little bit more about you, about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on here. I'm super excited about this. As you said, yes, I am the founder of Hustle and Scale, co-founder of American Posture Institute, and I also have a SaaS company, or software as a service company, called Virtual Summit Software. I like to call it the trilogy. I've been in brick and mortar business, online education, and now software, as well as a few other things. So to say I enjoy building businesses, you'd be spot on right there. But I also believe one of the most important things, which I'm sure we're going to get into, is gratitude. And I've actually got some great stories I'm looking forward to sharing with your audience.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm really, really curious about how it was for you to build businesses. And for instance, in my experience, the fact that you have a perspective from you have a gratitude perspective on life, it helps you see the resources around you. And I'm really curious, how did gratitude help you build those multi-million-dollar businesses?
Well, I would actually, of course, the gratitude helped me build them, but I would definitely say gratitude helped me go through the process of building them, or through the process of success. It kind of starts, we've all heard that kind of story, when the Olympic skier wins the gold medal, they're kind of lost. What do they do now? They've kind of achieved their highest goal.
Yeah.
And something I've noticed personally, but I've also noticed it with other friends or people in my kind of masterminds that I associate with, is when you get to kind of a level where you've accomplished what you thought would be the highest points you could ever accomplish, you kind of go through a period of loss, and in some instances, you can almost lose your way. You lose purpose, and which I believe, and I've felt personally, that when you lose purpose, it's one of the most disheartening and kind of sad. I don't like to say sad. It's kind of the most empty periods you can be in. It's just a feeling of empty, which is very ironic because you technically have everything you've ever wanted. But what it is you lose that purpose, that fulfillment. And the only way I believe to really get that back is to focus on gratitude.
Wow, this is wonderful. And it actually relates to something that happened recently. Um, I don't know if you know this, but the best female tennis player in the world is Romanian. And after winning the French, uh, it's one of the biggest tournaments in France. I don't remember exactly the name. Um, she now lost her first game in the US Open. And it's a similar situation in which she won something really big, and afterwards it seems that she lost focus, and she wasn't able to continue at the same level. And I think this is very similar and very interesting because it's actually something that happened these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you see this a lot. We hear it. I mean, this aspect is kind of a little sad or a little pessimistic, but we'll get into the positive aspects, I'm sure, here as we keep going. But I mean, this is why you see and hear a lot of the big celebrities, a lot of the high-level CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, all committing suicide. We've all heard of the lottery winner who eventually committed suicide. If you don't have purpose, then nothing else matters. Nothing has meaning. And if we don't, as humans, we're not designed to operate without purpose and without meaning. And again, this can be on different levels for everybody. It's not just for the Fortune 500 people, but usually a lot of times going through our journeys, we know what we're focusing on. We're all busy working on that, which continues to give us purpose, which then gives us fulfillment. But if you get to success quickly, which some people do, or you kind of achieve these goals that you've had your whole life, it's easy to lose that purpose. It's easy to lose that fulfillment because one of the things I say is having more, having money's great. Having more money doesn't really mean much. Of course, you want to have money, but it doesn't have meaning. And if we don't have meaning, it's easy to feel empty and lost. And again, I believe the only way to really get that back is through gratitude.
Wonderful. And by the way, how did you use gratitude in those moments of your life?
Well, I would definitely say so. There's two big moments that stick out in my mind. The first being I was in the military. I was an Army National Guard, and I was pulled out of pre-med and sent to Iraq. So I was in the war at 20 years old. So as a 20-year-old, I got to become familiar with the potential of losing everything very quickly. Also, it was a difficult experience because you go from your normal daily life of having all the comforts of home, running water, a working bathroom, going to bed when you want, electricity, air conditioning, etc., to being over in Iraq at that period of time. We did not have any of that. So you learn to appreciate the little things. Additionally, so I would say with that experience, I reflect back on that experience a lot because whenever I'm having any kind of problems or complications or issues, I just think back to that. And I don't like to say it could always be worse, but sometimes it's important to recognize your situation right now and how good you have it. Mm-hmm. And if that's something that helps you, that's a way of doing it. I always look at it and go, hey, at least I've got running water in a bathroom inside of my house right now. Because during that 18 months, I did not. The other side of it, how gratitude helped me is, I built multiple businesses, but one of the biggest businesses I built, which was a multimillion-dollar and is a multimillion-dollar business, it went through the same period that I was just referring to, where eventually we came to success rather quickly. We are one of the industry kind of titans in our space. But as soon as I had everything I needed or wanted, it all kind of lost its importance. It's lost its value. And I lost a little bit, I lost my purpose and my way. And that's one of the reasons, I almost tanked that company almost overnight. And so having gratitude, I went through this kind of deep, period of almost depression, of just feeling lost and confused and like, not even wanting to keep doing it. Cause it's like, what's the point? I've accomplished everything I'd ever thought or dreamt of, or even hoped of accomplishing in my life. I had it all. So just having more of it didn't really help me. But it wasn't until I started focusing back on gratitude, on what I had and why it's important, and the small things. And like one of the biggest things that helped me is I started focusing on kind of this thought process of revel in the moment, celebrate your wins, enjoy what you have. Because I stopped celebrating even the small wins. I stopped appreciating the moment, and I wasn't enjoying what I had because I was just constantly looking for more of it. So gratitude actually helped pull me out of that period. I mean, and it was a dark period for sure. And this is really kind of ironic thinking about it. I haven't really talked about this too much publicly. So this is an interesting interview here.
Thank you for that.
No problem. But during that period, I remember specifically like having everything I needed or wanted, having more money than I could spend, having all the gadgets and doodads and being able to do whatever I wanted, but nothing seemed fulfilling. It's almost like to kind of put it into a metaphor, if it's like be eating food, but having no taste to the food. It's like, it was like, what was the point? So pulling out of that came from going back to the small things, like little things, again, running water, working toilet, having people around me that loved me and cared about me, just focusing on the small things. And when we had these wins, because we had accomplished so many big wins, that was the only thing we were really celebrating anymore. But we had little wins all the time. We all have little wins, hey, the car started today. That's a great win, but learning to focus on small things, which is in turn gratitude, being grateful for the little things that are working in that the accomplishments. And then of course, enjoying what you have instead of constantly focusing on more. So that's how it helped me during that period of time.
This is really, really good. And I love the perspective. For instance, I think many businesses go down instead of continually growing or just staying steady, because on the back end of a business is a human being or some human beings. And if they're not able to continue to be grateful, to appreciate, to see how amazing life is as they built it, it's not motivating to keep on going and to keep on creating and keep on doing those kinds of things that keep the business running. And it's such an interesting perspective. And I also wanted to ask you something that I think can be really helpful for our listeners. As much as you can, of course, because I know that there might be military things that are forbidden to speak about. But tell us a little bit about your conditions there in Iraq, because I think it can be really helpful for us to see how great we have it when we see how hard it was for you in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. That period, that moment of time is what I refer back to always, that kind of started my journey. Because just to paint the full picture, I'm a 20-year-old in college going through pre-med, it's kind of like the world is my oyster. Like I was naively believed the entire world revolved around me, as most of us do when we're younger, right? So when I got pulled out of college and sent to Iraq, it was a very quick awakening. The conditions being very, very poor at the time, because I was in one of the first rounds that went right as soon as the war started. So, of course, now the conditions are greatly improved from what I've heard. But back then, we were 16 or 17 men in a tent in Iraq, with extreme heat, extreme temperatures. The bathrooms, which were just like porta potties, essentially, were about half a mile outside of what was called Tent City, which is just all of these tents kind of stacked next to each other. So if you woke up in the middle of the night and you had to go to the bathroom, you had to walk half a mile to get there. The showers the showers and sinks or whatnot were next to the latrines. So that was about a half a mile away as well. But the funny thing with those is they had these we would have these water trucks that would come and fill these big portable water tanks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there was water in there, you could have a shower. Like if you were one of the later ones to get there and the water was gone, you couldn't have a shower. The
Oh
other
my
funny
God.
or kind of the other aspect to it is it wasn't heated, right? It was just a tanker with water in it. So depending on the temperature of the day, so the first thing in the morning, like a lot of times we were on the Humvees to go out before 3 or 4 in the morning. So it's still in the middle of the night. And so if you take a shower at that point, the water feels freezing because it's cold.
Wow.
But then during the day, and that's when you want the warm water, right? But then during the day, when you come back and you want a cold shower because you've been out in the extreme heat, the water's been in the sun all day and it's scalding hot. So that's a little bit of the conditions. But what actually the most important aspect of that, or my takeaway from that kind of put me on this path, was while I was there, again, I was referred to how I kind of thought the world revolved around me. I thought my family was here for me. I thought my friends were here for me. I thought, everything was for me at that period. And when I got there, of course, I was receiving packages and letters and, I felt the love and people missed me. But as time went on, the packages and the letters slowed down. And what I quickly realized is that everybody else, their lives were continuing on as normal. Like in my mind, I thought, well, nobody's going to be able to, the world can't possibly continue without me, right? But at that moment is when I actually came to a harrowing truth, is that if I died today, like, of course people would be sad, but their lives would go on exactly as normal. And then I started thinking like, well, what have I done? Like what's going to, if I die, because it was a very real possibility. People were dying there. And so if I died today, like what would live on after me? My family would of course miss me and be sad, but what would continue on? And then after they're gone, nobody would remember me. And that was when I made a vow, kind of an oath to myself. If I made it out of this and I was able to come home, I would focus and build a legacy. And ever since I got back from Iraq, I've been I call it a ferocious vision. I am 100% committed to building a positive legacy and doing things that impact people in the world that will live on without me. And people always say, man, you're so intense. How do you do all of this stuff? Like how do you run 4 or 5 different companies and 3 or 4 national organizations? And I say, look, I have a very limited time right here. Every day is a blessing. And I am going to do the most good I can every day while I'm here.
Wow, this is so inspiring. Like all of those negative things that have happened there and that they actually made you into a stronger person, into a person that's even more appreciative of life and of the gift that you have and that you want to give actually to the world. And I think this is amazing. Like it's such an empowering way of living life. Like if we are in conditions that are really harsh right now, that can actually become a fuel, right? To leave a legacy, to do something good for the world.
Yeah, that's what it is. And honestly, again, going back to those kind of 3 steps, revel in the moment, celebrate your wins, and enjoy what you have. Because no matter where you're at right now in your current position, somebody has less than you. And they've done all kinds of studies, scientific studies that show some of the happiest people on the planet have the least amount of things. And I truly believe in that because I can talk from the opposite aspect of that. The more things you have doesn't make you more happy. And I'm not one to say like, money is bad or anything like that. I don't agree with that. But what happens, the more we have, the less we appreciate it. The further away we get from being content and grateful for what we have in our current situations. And the more we focus, so the opposite of that, the more we focus on being thankful and grateful for the things we do have, no matter how small or how minimal that might be, the happier we're going to be. And in the end, I mean, really, that's all that matters, is being happy and content with what you have. Revel in the moment, because the moments pass quickly. And honestly, like, even if you live a full life, it's just a blip. It's a small period of time. So enjoy every single moment. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't get to enjoy that entire lifespan. And so it's one of those things, like, you never know, like, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So enjoy today, enjoy the moments, celebrate your wins, whatever you're working on, whatever that thing is that you're kind of hoping to do or trying to do, celebrate even the small wins. Like, even if you just got something else accomplished today, celebrate that, because the more we celebrate our wins, the more grateful we'll be. And then, of course, enjoy what you have, because there's always somebody out there that has less than you. And I know that kind of seems cliche and like, well, so what? I want more. But honestly, just be grateful for what you have. I'm telling you, having more does not necessarily make life better. If you can learn, and it's a practiced exercise, I can tell you it does not come naturally. But if you can learn to just constantly be thankful for what you have, you're going to be so much happier and probably more successful as well in the long run.
Exactly. This is one of it. It's like you spoke what I always wanted to express to the gratitude seekers. This is the exact same thing that I'm always thinking about and wanting to get the word out about, because this is the truth, and this has been my experience, and this has been your experience, and the experience of many other people around the world. But I also wanted to ask you something. I know that you've traveled a lot. You've been in 40 of the 50 states of the United States. You've been to the Arctic Circle, most of the Caribbean, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Dubai, Iraq, Jerusalem, Scandinavia, most of Europe, Africa, and Canada. And I'm really curious to find out how this changed you. How did this traveling help you see the world from a different perspective?
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics right here. You can tell I love traveling just by all of those countries. But yeah, I actually I lived in Italy for 6 years, which allowed me it allowed me the opportunity to travel to a lot of those amazing places like Europe. I've traveled to almost every country in Europe. And it was just stunning. It was just amazing. So traveling in general is one of those things that I think helps us be grateful. It helps. It keeps us kind of young and lighthearted, and like we're awe-inspiring, because you see new things, you experience new experiences, you meet new people, and you feel new cultures. And so, I mean, this can be summed for all of the countries I've visited, but specifically living in Italy, learning their culture, and what it did for me is it helped me see things from a different point of view.
Yeah.
Stereotypically Americans, we have, this kind of way about ourselves, and we kind of think we know everything, I guess. Like that's bad. I'm stereotyping everybody. Please forgive me, Americans. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times, many of us in America, we don't get the opportunity to travel outside of America. But when you do that, and when you see these new cultures, and you learn and you meet new people, what it does is you realize, one, that it doesn't matter how different people are, like you learn to relate and connect with them. So, I mean, many of the people I met, we had very different opinions on life and how things should be. Everything from work to family to, religions or whatever. But what you learn to do is look past that and just enjoy the person. So that's one aspect of it. For me, traveling, it was great to be able to move past my own barriers of beliefs and learn to just appreciate people and then the little things. I mean, obviously when you travel, things are completely different from country to country. The way we do or have things in America is much different than Italy, which is much different than Africa, right? There's different comforts. There's different conveniences and technology, but it's so amazing. So if you have to, if you're going to be a world traveler, learn to accept that things are going to be different. Some things are going to be less convenient, which would not be ideal in most scenarios, but you learn to appreciate the beauty of what they have. So I think, and specifically in Italy, for them, the culture is food, family, and being in the moment, which really helps me slow down my speed of life. Because in one of the things, one of the bad habits, I guess, that I developed in the US was always going. We work 100, 120 hours, whatever, as an entrepreneur a week sometimes. And most people in America, I think they said the last stat I saw, like most people work 52 hours a week on average. So that's a lot. In Italy, nobody worked that much. I mean, if anything, they worked probably less, they work less than anybody, but it's a beautiful aspect because for them, like, work doesn't really matter. What matters is family, food, and enjoying the moment. And so by being there and understanding that culture and kind of adapting or adopting that mindset, it really did a lot for my peace, for being at peace, as well as being grateful and appreciating things. I mean, because it would have been easy to be the opposite. It would have been easy, Italy's got these funny things, like for some reason on Thursday afternoons, all the shops close, and the lunch is only served from 12, like noon to 2. And if you miss that, you can't get lunch. So,
Yeah.
and then like the government offices, like flip a coin whether or not they're going to be open on any given day. So it would have been easy to show up there and then be closed and then get all frustrated because, I needed to get this document today. But the Italian culture, it's va bene, like, oh well, let's get a coffee instead. So that aspect of Italy, and I would say for traveling, it definitely helps you appreciate and be grateful for what you have, but also like almost awe-founded or kind of it almost puts things into perspective too, because I mean, I've seen buildings, I've been in buildings that are 500, 700 years old. I've seen structures that are 4,000 years old. I mean, and when you put it in perspective like that, how can you not be like awestruck and inspired and grateful, right?
Exactly. I love traveling too, and it's all the time really inspiring, and it really, like you said, it brings perspective to life, to how I am as a person, seeing other people that are very different from how I am, that maybe, like you said, feel different about different aspects of life. And it's really interesting to see other people, but also see yourself in those contexts, because it's not the same as seeing those things on the TV, as it is to be there, to like be in an Italian restaurant and smell the pasta or the pizza, or interact with the waiter. It's a whole nother experience, and totally, like, I love this part about Italians, the fact that they take time to enjoy things, and it's an important part. And even though from one point of view, it can be like, okay, they should be working harder or something. I think they are teaching us a lesson by how they are too. Like, there is the need for a balance and for appreciating things and for appreciating life, that is still as important as working hard and getting lots of things and reaching the heights of success, right?
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it there, and you made an amazing point with that. It's about balance, right? And in balance on both sides. I mean, that was probably even a better way of saying what I was trying to say earlier. Is, having too much of something isn't good either. Having too little is where we a lot of times focus on, but it's about the balance. So
Exactly. So I wanted to ask you if you've always been grateful, but better yet, if you could go back in time, like maybe 10 or 20 years ago when you weren't this grateful? What would you tell your younger self about gratitude?
Well, I would definitely say I have not always been grateful. I have always been fortunate, but I didn't always appreciate what I've had. And that's not just in the past, it's gratitude, I think, is a mindset, and we can be in it or out of it. And I also saw, I've seen some quotes or posts actually recently, which I think is appropriate for this interview, is it's you can't be grateful and depressed at the same time. So that aspect is something to understand, is we can come in and out of gratitude. I mean, obviously. So it is a learned and a practiced skill, I would say. But for my younger self, I think the first thing I would do, because I don't think my younger self would have understood the importance of it, because he wouldn't have had all the experiences, the stumbles and the life lessons and the things like that I have had. So the first thing I think I would make him do is read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, so he could put his mind around like what that aspect of thought, the power of thought, how important that is, because he probably wouldn't listen to me, right? He'd need to hear it from somebody else first. But at that point, then I would have the conversation with him about the power of thought and how every thought that goes in or out affects the outcome of your life. I mean, I truly believe I've gotten everything I've ever wished for. And sometimes that's a curse, because I'm not talking about just money or things. I mean, I remember when I used to say like, oh man, all I want to do is just travel all the time. That's all I want to do. Like, I love traveling. I wish I could just travel. And then sure enough, 6 months or a year later, I recognized, man, I am traveling every weekend for conferences, for seminars, for teaching, for this. And I'm like, this is too much travel. So be careful what you put in or out, because I truly believe you do get what you ask for, not necessarily tomorrow, but down the road. So I would tell them about the power of thought. Everything that goes in and out affects the outcome of your life. So guard your brain and your thoughts closely and do your best to fill it with positive things or constructive things, because it will affect your life. And this is also, I mean, I think we overlook it. I know my partner tells me this more, because I do like the occasional scary movie, right? But she's very adamant. She won't watch anything scary, anything bad, grotesque, or negative, because she's very adamant that what goes into your brain will affect your life. And I think a lot of times we think about what we think of in our own thoughts, but we don't really pay attention to just the fact of what we put in there can affect us as well. So that's probably what I would be specifically speaking to him about, and hopefully he would listen to me.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. But at least our listeners will get your message, and hopefully they will listen, and they will look into Think and Grow Rich and into being more grateful, and into being more aware of what goes in as thoughts. But you also mentioned something that's really important. You said that when you were traveling, it took you a while to realize that you were actually enjoying something that you wished for a few months ago or a year ago. And I think that's really interesting as we work as humans. And that's another reason why I think gratitude is so important, because sometimes at this exact precise moment, we are living the life of our dreams, but we just don't see it. And I think that's really interesting. Like, we might be doing those same things that we dreamed about maybe 1 year ago or 2 years ago, or a couple of months ago, but we just don't realize that we're doing that. And your example, I think, speaks a lot about the situation. And without us acknowledging the fact that we are living the dream life that we thought about at one point, we're not appreciating it because we don't realize it. We're not realizing it. And I think that's so interesting about how we work, don't you think?
Yeah, as humans, it's interesting just sitting here listening to you and thinking about this topic. It's almost like we're wired for the opposite. We're wired to not
Yeah,
appreciate and not think about what we have. And I think that goes back kind of to, if we were to take this back, to genetic roots and whatnot, like cavemen and prehistoric beings, we probably couldn't sit around and relish, oh, look, we've got this, new rabbit we just killed. We need to be, back then we needed to be thinking about where we're going to get the next rabbit from.
exactly.
Maybe it goes to that a little bit, but what I have noticed from myself and from others and having the same discussion with others is that, as humans, we essentially, we set goals and then we move towards those goals. But the thing is, when we get towards those goals, the goal isn't fixed. We move the goal forward. So the goal is always moving forward, and we're always focused on this thing. And when I say goal, it could be anything. It's not necessarily monetary or business success. It could be family. It could be having, getting married and having kids or whatever. But every time we kind of get towards that goal, we push it further away. So we're always in chase or in pursuit of a goal that honestly like seems like we never achieve it, but it's because we don't stop going back to my original statement, we don't stop and celebrate the wins and revel in the moment. So if we just stop and look back, like where have we come from in the last 6 months or last 12 months or 5 years, and appreciate the journey we've been on to this point, it'll help us also recognize that, oh, wow, I really have made some progress. I really have accomplished those things. And that's when it became very apparent to me, like, wow, like everything I've ever asked for, I've gotten, both positively and negatively. And that's when I started recognizing the importance of being careful what you wish for and being very specific for what you wish for as well. So yeah, I agree with you completely.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. And yeah, and the way of we can do this, for instance, in your situation with traveling, we can be grateful for the fact that we are traveling a lot. Let's say if we were in your shoes, but also we can think of, okay, I realized that I was able to create this in my life. Now I just need to optimize it a little bit and maybe travel more for leisure rather than for business, maybe, or have more time for myself or for my family while I'm traveling. But the thing is that when we realize that we made things happen and we appreciate them, it actually empowers us to create new and better things without feeling the like we're not where we want to be, but appreciating the things that we have constructed that are good, right?
Yeah, and you said one of my favorite words, optimization. So with my business Hustle and Scale, when I'm working with entrepreneurs to kind of get their business to the next level, whether it's taking a side hustle to a six-figure business or from a six-figure to a seven-figure business or seven figures to sale, we're always looking at optimization. And one of the things, I think after this conversation, I'm going to focus on more is as we're going through those steps, as we're optimizing their business so that they can scale it, so they can make it bigger and better and accomplish whatever their goals are. I think I'm going to start including, which I've never done before with when I'm helping these entrepreneurs, we're going to start including like, well, what have you accomplished, and celebrating those specific wins, because I think, I truly believe it's important. I had not actually put the focus like that into the people I'm helping, but I think that would be amazing for them too, because we're constantly optimizing their business. How can they, depending on their team, maybe it's a team of 1 or a team of 10, how can they get the most out, make the most impact, and help get their message out to the world? But I think now we're going to start looking at also, what have you done so far, and let's celebrate those wins.
Exactly, because you build on that and you realize, oh my God, I've reached this level. It's quite amazing. I can do more. And for me, it's always been very helpful to be doing this. But we're nearing the end of our time together, and I wanted to ask you, in your life, who are the people that influenced you in a positive way, for whom you are really grateful? And who the people that you would like to mention?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. I would have to say there's probably many, many, many people, but for the sake of time, the two that stand out the most, first being my father, Wes Waid. He's always supported me through all of the ups and downs, and he's always been that voice and word of wisdom that helped me along the way, believed in me when nobody else believed in me, supported me when when I had those failures, which we all have along the way. And he's also been the example. He is who's inspired me and told me I could do whatever I put my mind to, and
Wow.
gave me that mindset of thinking outside the box. The other would be my partner, Dr. Krista Burns. She's also the co-founder of the American Posture Institute, that company over there. But she continues to support me along this journey right now. And she would be, if I had to say, she'd be the example. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of things that she can do. Both, she's one of the most intelligent, beautiful, just inspiring people I've ever met. And she's constantly inspiring me to do more and to be better. So those would be the two people I definitely want to say, thank you to them and who've helped me be grateful along the way.
Wow. I love the explanations and what you feel about these people from your life, and I think it's amazing, and it's actually an example of how you can express gratitude and how you can be grateful for certain people. So where can our audience find you? Where can our audience see your work and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So on Facebook, I'm over at Hustle and Scale. So Hustle and Scale. I'm there regularly. You can jump on Messenger there and shoot me a message. I check all of those. Also, I'm on Instagram. If you want to follow me on my journey and my travels and see cool images, you can also go on Instagram. And again, it's Hustle and Scale. And then, of course, my website is Hustle and Scale as well. So you search Hustle and Scale, you'll find me.
Perfect. So make sure you go to hustleandscale.com and you will find Mark there, and you can get in touch with him. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here with us, for sharing so much of your life and your experience with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being grateful right now for even being on this interview with you, I'd like to just go ahead and give your audience a free gift for anybody who it's relevant to and wants it. I specialize in a strategy called the One Day Summit. So I'll give you the link that you can put in the show notes. But if they wanted to go to hustleandscale.com/free course, I'll give them a free course on how they can set up their own one-day summit so that they can start scaling their business for those entrepreneurs that are out there in your audience.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this interview. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you give a rating or a review on iTunes, or just subscribe if you want to stay in touch and receive such interviews directly on your phone whenever they come up. This has been Georgian Benta. Don't forget to keep seeking gratitude. Thank you.